We see the concrete pouring, the towering steel, the engineering marvels taking shape.
Sure, the visible stuff.
Exactly. But behind that immense physical structure is an equally complex, entirely invisible architecture of legal procedures and timelines. And if that procedural structure collapses, it takes the funding, the timeline, and often the entire business right down with it.
And that invisible architecture is exactly what we're exploring in today's deep dive. We are looking at the FIDIC Red Book, specifically the widely adopted 2017 edition.
Which is huge.
It is. For anyone navigating international construction projects, this is the global gold standard for standard form construction contracts. Our mission today is to decode the notoriously rigid workflow for managing claims under these rules.
It's a 7-step claims workflow, right?
Yes, 7 steps. We're talking about a system where procedural discipline isn't just an administrative chore. It is literally the difference between getting paid millions of dollars and walking away with absolute zero.
It really is.
Okay, let's unpack this, because construction law can have a highly intimidating reputation.
Oh, it definitely does.
But for you listening, whether you're managing a project, prepping for a negotiation, or just wildly curious about how billions of dollars are actually governed on a global scale, understanding this mechanism isn't just academic theory. It is pure survival.
I agree completely. Knowledge is most valuable when it is actually applied, and that philosophy is baked right into the DNA of the FID rules. Well, the reason these specific contracts matter so much, and the reason they strike genuine fear into the hearts of project managers globally, is because they utilize what we call peremptory deadlines.
Peremptory.
Yeah.
That sounds serious.
It is absolute. A peremptory deadline is non-negotiable. If you miss it, your right to claim money or time is simply extinguished, wiped out entirely.
Wow. Just gone.
Just gone. The core belief driving this ruthless mechanism is that knowledge and communication are utterly useless if they are hidden. These strict rules were engineered to force early communication.
Right, forcing parties to put their cards on the table immediately.
Exactly, rather than letting disputes fester in the dark until the ribbon-cutting ceremony 3 years later.
Which means you can't just suddenly demand a mountain of cash at the end of a 3-year build because of a delay that happened in month 2.
Right, you can't just ambush them.
There seems to be an entire pre-game of communication that has to happen. The absolute second trouble appears on the horizon. My understanding from the sources is that before a formal claim even exists, there's a requirement to issue an advance warning under subclause 8.4, right?
Yes, that's exactly right. Acting in good faith to avoid disaster is the foundation here.
So if you're on site and you spot a known or probable future event that could wreck the timeline or inflate the price, you have to raise your hand right then and there.
You do. And while missing that initial advance warning isn't an instant fatal blow to a future claim, it significantly sets the stage.
Okay, so it doesn't kill the claim completely.
Not instantly, no. But if a contractor fails to give this early warning, and that silence prejudices the engineer's ability to properly investigate the issue or mitigate the damage before it snowballs, the contractor's eventual payout or time extension can be heavily reduced.
I see.
It's basically the contract's way of saying, if you see a pothole, tell us so we can steer around it, rather than letting us drive into it and then asking us to pay for your broken suspension.
I love that framing. But let's say the pothole is totally unavoidable. The event happens. We hit the first massive trapdoor in this contract, which is the notice of claim under subclause 20.2.1.
All right, here we go.
The sources emphasize a dreaded 28-day rule. Am I reading this right? Once you become aware of an event that gives rise to a claim, you have exactly 28 days to issue a formal written notice of claim directly to the engineer.
Yes, exactly 28 days.
And the kicker is the clock starts not just when you actually realize there was a problem, but when you should have realized it.
That's the part that catches people out. The standard is based on a reasonable, diligent contractor. Negligent ignorance does not pause the timer.
Right.
If a competent team should have noticed the flooding on Tuesday, your 28-day countdown starts on Tuesday. It doesn't matter if your specific site manager didn't bother to look at the water level until Friday.
Honestly, this sounds like missing a flight. You know,
It really is.
it doesn't matter if there was terrible traffic or your alarm didn't go off or like your dog literally ate your car keys. The plane leaves without you. The deadline is absolute. But I have to push back here. Is it really that harsh in practice?
Oh.
I mean, ignorance isn't an excuse, but what if you genuinely had your hands full, literally keeping a tunnel from collapsing? You're supposed to stop bailing water to go write an email.
What's fascinating here is the underlying physical reality that dictates that harshness. Construction is a kinetic, constantly changing environment.
Sure.
The 28-day rule exists because investigations need to happen in real time. Think about that tunnel collapse or massive foundational issue. In the immediate aftermath, evidence is fresh. People remember exactly what happened.
And mitigation strategies can be deployed immediately.
Exactly. But more importantly, the project keeps moving. Trenches are backfilled. Concrete is poured.
Right.
If you wait 3 months to tell the engineer there was a problem with the rebar, the evidence is literally buried under 1,000 tons of cured concrete.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So the severity is entirely intentional. If you miss that 28-day window, the consequences are total. No additional payment, no extension of time, and the other party is entirely discharged from liability for that specific event.
It's just a fatal procedural failure. But I also noticed the engineer has their feet to the fire here, too.
Oh, definitely.
If the contractor submits that 28-day notice of claim, the engineer has a tight 14-day window to challenge it if they think it arrived late. And if the engineer stays silent for those 14 days, the contract dictates that silence equals acceptance. The notice is deemed valid.
Yeah, the rules demand agility from everyone involved. It prevents the engineer from holding a late notice in their back pocket as a trump card to play months down the line.
Right, like a trap.
Exactly. If they think it's late, they have to say so immediately.
Okay, so let's play this out. You survived the pregame. You spotted the pothole. You hit the 28-day deadline. You were officially on the flight. But a warning isn't proof. How do you actually build an argument that forces the other side to hand over millions of dollars?
That is step 3.
The sources talk heavily about the transition from a simple warning to serious documentation, specifically demanding what they call contemporary records under subclause 20.2.3. And they really emphasize that word, contemporary.
Because that specific word carries massive legal weight. Contemporary means generated at the exact time of the event, or immediately after.
So what are we talking about here?
We are talking about daily site diaries, daily weather logs, labor timesheets, equipment cost sheets, photographs with timestamps.
Real-time data.
Yes. A contractor cannot sit down in an office 6 months after an event and try to retroactively construct a narrative timeline from memory to support a multi-million-dollar claim. Arbitrators and adjudicators will throw that out instantly.
I bet.
The records must be an unassailable, real-time reflection of the reality on the ground as the event was unfolding.
So you are basically building a forensic paper trail while simultaneously trying to build a skyscraper.
That's a great way to put it.
And all of those contemporary records feed directly into the next massive hurdle, which is the fully detailed claim under subclause 20.2.4. My understanding is you have to build the submission on 4 solid pillars.
Right, 4 pillars.
First, the detailed story of the event. Second, the exact legal and contractual basis, meaning you have to point to the specific clause giving you the right to ask for this money.
Yes.
Third, you attach all those contemporary records you've been obsessively keeping. And fourth, you provide the exact math, the delay analysis, and the dollar amounts. But what kind of time frame are we looking at to put this massive dossier together?
Here comes the next peremptory deadline. The fully detailed claim must be submitted within 84 days of the date the contractor became aware of the event.
84 days.
Yeah, and if you recall, you had 28 days just to issue the initial notice. That means you essentially have 56 additional days to gather your daily records, run the complex delay analysis, calculate the financial impact down to the penny, and build those 4 pillars.
And if you miss it?
Just like the first deadline, if you miss this 84-day window, that initial notice of claim you fought so hard to file, it lapses entirely. It just evaporates.
But wait, what if the problem is an ongoing disaster? Say it's an unprecedented monsoon season and it has not stopped raining for 6 weeks.
Yeah, happens a lot.
The site is a mud pit, the industrial pumps are running 24/7, and costs are mounting by the hour. How on earth do you submit a final mathematical calculation within 84 days when the financial bleeding hasn't stopped?
That is a highly practical dilemma, and the framework anticipates it beautifully with a mechanism known as the continuing effect rule under subclause 20.2.6.
The continuing effect rule, how does that work?
If the event causing the delay or the cost is ongoing, your 84-day submission is treated as an interim claim. You are essentially submitting a package that says, here's the proof of what this has cost us up to this exact moment.
Okay, so it buys you time.
Exactly. From there, the contractor is required to submit further interim claims at monthly intervals. The final peremptory deadline only triggers when the event actually ends. You must submit your absolute final, fully detailed claim within 28 days after the effects of the disaster completely cease.
Wow. I saw something in the notes about cash flow during these ongoing disasters.
Yeah.
It blew my mind. Does the contractor just have to bleed cash and risk bankruptcy while waiting for a final legal resolution months down the line?
Right.
Or is there a mechanism to keep the lights on?
Starting a contractor of cash during an ongoing crisis helps no one, least of all the project owner who just wants their dam or their high-rise built.
Right.
The framework provides a massive lifeline. The engineer can actually include reasonably substantiated amounts from those ongoing interim claims into the regular monthly payment certificates.
Oh, that's huge.
It is. This keeps the cash flowing to cover the immediate disaster mitigation, even while the final details of the dispute are still being sorted out. But of course, this lifeline only works if the contractor has maintained flawless procedural discipline with those contemporary records we talked about. No records, no interim cash.
Okay, so you submitted this massive, rigorously documented claim package. It doesn't just sit in a void on a server somewhere. Someone has to actually read it, evaluate it, and make a call. Enter the neutral arbiter,
Yes.
namely the engineer. Now, the engineer has a two-phase process here. First is the agreement phase. They have 42 days to consult with both the contractor and the employer to try and broker an amicable agreement.
Right, and this phase relies heavily on diplomacy. The engineer sits down with both parties, lays out the fully detailed claim, and tries to find a commercial middle ground.
And if they agree?
If they can reach a consensus, both parties sign off, the agreement becomes binding, and the project moves forward without a lingering dispute.
Here's where it gets really interesting. If they cannot agree within that 42-day window, the engineer shifts gears into the determination phase.
Yeah.
They have another 42 days to make a formal, fair determination. And the wild dynamic here in the newer FID 2017 rules is that the engineer isn't acting as the project owner's bulldog. They are contractually obligated to act neutrally.
Absolutely neutrally.
I have to imagine that creates an incredible psychological tension. The project owner is the one paying the engineer's massive firm fees, yet the engineer might have to look at their boss and say, "You owe the contractor $5 million."
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that is a profound shift from older contracting models. Decades ago, the engineer was largely seen as the employer's agent, fiercely guarding the employer's wallet.
Right, the enforcer.
Exactly. But in this modern determination process, the engineer is required to step out of that role. They must weigh the facts, the contract, and the contemporary records with absolute impartiality. They make a ruling, and that ruling is immediately binding on both parties. It requires immense professional integrity.
But what happens if someone fundamentally disagrees with this so-called fair determination? Say the engineer determines you get a 1-week extension and $50,000, but you have mathematical proof you deserve 2 months and $500,000. Does the engineer's word just become law?
This brings us to the most critical gateway in the entire escalation workflow. The Notice of Dissatisfaction, commonly referred to as the NOD.
The NOD.
If you are dissatisfied with the engineer's determination, whether you are the contractor feeling shortchanged or the employer feeling overcharged, you have exactly 28 days from receiving that determination to issue an NOD.
Another 28-day trapdoor.
Consider it the ultimate trapdoor. If you fail to issue that NOD within those 28 days, the engineer's determination becomes final and binding forever. You cannot challenge it later. You cannot take it to an arbitration tribunal next year. The book is permanently closed.
I found the concept of severability fascinating here. The sources highlight that you don't have to nuke the entire determination.
Right, it's very flexible.
If the engineer's ruling has 5 distinct parts, and you agree with 4 of them, you can issue an NOD strictly for the one part you hate. The other 4 parts immediately become final and binding, and the money for those parts can be paid out.
Yes.
It elegantly prevents massive billion-dollar projects from grinding to an absolute halt over a minor disagreement about scaffolding rental costs.
It is brilliant project management psychology. You can find the radioactive dispute to the smallest possible footprint, allowing the healthy parts of the project to keep moving forward without being contaminated by endless litigation.
So let's say the NOD is filed. The engineer's ruling wasn't enough to settle the blood feud. The dispute needs a higher authority. We are now moving out of the engineer's hands and escalating to the big leagues. First, stop at the DAAB.
Right.
That stands for the Dispute Avoidance and Adjudication Board. And the sources point out a fatal mistake project teams make right at the starting line. They don't appoint the DAAB at the very start of the project.
Which is a huge error.
Yeah, it's supposed to be done within 28 days of the letter of acceptance, basically before the first shovel even hits the dirt. Why is it so critical to hire these people before anyone is even arguing?
Think about it like a project smoke detector. If you wait until your kitchen is completely engulfed in flames to drive to the hardware store and buy a smoke detector, it's far too late.
That makes perfect sense.
The psychology of the DAAB relies on them being wired into the house while it's being built. Unlike an international arbitrator who is brought in 3 years later and has to read 10,000 pages of documents just to understand what the site's concrete pouring process looked like, the DAAB is on a monthly retainer from day one.
Oh, I see.
It is typically a panel of 1 to 3 highly experienced neutral experts, paid equally by both the employer and the contractor. They visit the site regularly, they know the personalities of the project managers, they know the weather conditions, they understand the project intimately before a dispute ever arises.
Which means when a massive dispute actually hits their desk, they aren't starting from zero. They already know the context.
Yep.
But of course, because this is FIDIC, there are rapid-fire deadlines to actually get the dispute to their desk. Once you issue that notice of dissatisfaction against the engineer, you have exactly 42 days to formally refer the dispute to the DAB.
And if you miss that 42-day window, your entity lapses, it evaporates, and your right to escalate is permanently gone.
And once the dispute is properly referred, the clock starts for the DAB. They have 84 days to review the evidence, perhaps hold a hearing, and issue their formal decision. And just like the engineer's determination, the DAB decision is immediately binding.
It is.
Wait, I have to stop you there because this blew my mind when I read it. So the DAB makes a decision. Let's say they rule against the project owner. Even if the project owner thinks the DAAB bath is fundamentally, provably flawed, they have to comply immediately. They have to cut a check for $3 million right then and there.
They absolutely do. The guiding principle of this entire framework is pay first, argue later. Both parties must comply promptly with the DAB's decision, even if they fully intend to challenge it at a higher level later.
That seems wild to me. Why force a payment if the whole thing might get overturned in arbitration a year later?
Well, think about the alternative. If we didn't have this rule of immediate compliance, a well-funded project owner could just endlessly appeal decisions simply to delay paying what they owe.
Starving them out.
Exactly. They could use the legal appeals process as a strategy of financial starvation, and the contractor would go bankrupt waiting for the final legal verdict. The project would collapse. If a party refuses to comply with a binding DAAB decision, the other party can bypass all the remaining negotiation steps and take that non-compliance directly to arbitration for immediate enforcement.
Wow. Okay, so you pay first to keep the company alive and the project moving.
Yeah.
But how do you argue later? What is the final escalation if you still think the DA got it wrong?
After the DIA issues its decision, if you are still dissatisfied, you have, as you might guess, another 28-day window to issue a final notice of dissatisfaction, this time against the DAAB's decision.
Naturally. The 28-day ghost strikes again.
Always. But before you can drag everyone into a massive multi-year international arbitration tribunal, the contract requires one last attempt at peace. There is a mandatory 28-day amicable settlement cooling-off period. Both parties must at least attempt to sit down, look each other in the eye, and settle the dispute commercially before unleashing the lawyers.
But if those 28 days pass and everyone's still glaring at each other across the boardroom table, it's off to the final step. Final. Binding International Chamber of Commerce, or ICC, arbitration.
Right.
This is the heavy machinery of dispute resolution. The arbitrators essentially open up the entire history of the dispute and review any previous decisions that haven't become final and binding.
And this leads to one of the most fascinating human dynamics in this entire procedural journey. In that international arbitration, the engineer, the person who made that very first fair determination months or even years earlier, can actually be called to the stand as a witness.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. They have to sit under oath, under cross-examination by aggressive construction lawyers and defend their logic, their neutrality, and their interpretation of the records.
That is wild. The person who is just trying to keep the peace on a muddy construction site in year 1 is sitting in a formal tribunal in year 4, explaining exactly why they denied an email notice for being 24 hours late.
Yeah, it's intense.
It really underlines why every single email, every single site diary, and every single photograph matters so intensely.
It all routes back to the foundation we discussed earlier, the contemporary records. Without them, the engineer has nothing to rely on, the DAI has nothing to review, and the arbitrators have nothing to rule on.
So what does this all mean? If you are listening to this right now, maybe prepping to manage a major international contract or about to step onto a site for the first time, what is your ultimate survival guide? Based on everything we've pulled from these sources, I see 3 golden rules.
Let's hear them.
Number 1, know and actively calendar your peremptory deadlines. The 28-day notice window, the 84-day fully detailed claim window, the 42 days to refer to the DAAB. Treat them like gravity. You cannot negotiate with gravity.
Right.
Number 2, keep contemporary records from day 1, not week 2, day 1. And number 3, install your smoke detector before you start cooking. Get your DAAB in place before the project even begins.
The ultimate takeaway here is that in the high-stakes world of complex claims management, having substance without procedure is a dead end. You can be 100% right on the engineering facts, you can have the most brilliant structural analysis in the world, but if you are one day late on the procedural requirements, you will lose. Discipline is just as critical as technical expertise.
It really reframes how you look at a construction site entirely. We spent this entire deep dive looking at a rigid, unforgiving mechanism of deadlines and notices. And it leaves you wondering, when you look at a massive physical structure, a skyscraper piercing the clouds, or a bridge spanning a canyon, how much of the actual construction is physical labor, and how much is really just the invisible architecture of paper, rules, and human psychology, specifically designed to keep everyone honest? Keep digging into your contracts, and remember, preparation is always your greatest leverage. Catch you next time.
Download the free PDF claim checklist from our website. See the link in the description. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and see you next time.